Good morning, church. It's good to be with you today. Today we're going to start out in Psalm 107, and we hear about the hope and the power of the Lord our God, and we have a Jesus connection here, which is really why we want to talk about it. He says that in verse 23, others went to sea in ships conducting trade on the vast water. They saw the Lord's work, his wondrous works in the deep. He spoke and raised a stormy wind that stirred up the waves of the sea, rising up from the sky, sinking down to the depths, their courage melting away in anguish. They reeled and staggered like a drunkard, and all their skill was useless. Then they cried out to the Lord in their trouble, and he brought them out of their distress. He stilled the storm to a whisper, and the waves of the sea were hushed. They rejoiced when the waves grew quiet. Then he guided them to the harbor they longed for. Does that sound familiar to us? Well, it should, as we remember that Jesus calmed the stormy sea, and we have this connection again with him as the Lord our God. And we have here again a reminder of calling out to the Lord in our distress. Maybe this is something that we as Christians forget to do sometimes. We forget that when we're in the middle of hardship, that we need to cry out to the Lord, that we need to seek him and pursue his favor and desire that he would come and to save us and to rescue us. And that he loves us even in the little things. He can rescue us from issues that even we think maybe aren't that big of a deal. We've talked about when Elisha, through the power of God, caused the axe head to float up that had been borrowed. And we read today perhaps a favorite parable of many of ours, not a parable, this favorite story where we see that Jesus turns the water into wine. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother told him, "They don't have any wine." "What does that have to do with you and me, woman?" Jesus asked. "My hour has not yet come." "Do whatever he tells you," his mother told him, and so he fills up the purification jars and serves out the water. Now it's interesting, the use of the purification jars. And I wonder if there's not some symbolism that we could take from that. These were the jars that the people would plunge their hands into as they came in, and they would, wash themselves off in these jars. And so the jars themselves, though they could make things clean, would have been dirty themselves. They would not, physically dirty. They would not have been clean. And so for Jesus to take these particular jars, maybe that's what they had available. Of course, they would have had whatever the wine was served in originally. So Jesus had to have a reason for using these. He took what was physically dirty and he turned it into a redemptive event. He provided for the needs of the wedding. He spared the embarrassment of the host and the bad start to these people, these newlyweds, and he cared for them. He took what was unusual and he made it a delight. And it is for our life too. Jesus can take what we would normally consider to be an odd thing or an odd circumstance or even something that might be unclean, so to speak, and transform it into a wonderful blessing. Not because of what it is, but because he can transform anything, make it pure, and make it conform to his will and what he desires. As long as we submit it to him, he can do it. Finally, I want to talk briefly about a supposed Bible contradiction, the cleansing of the temple. Here it is. John records 3 Passovers. The Synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, only record 1. And in those Gospels, they record the cleansing of the temple as being when Jesus goes to Jerusalem, right up against his crucifixion, that Passion Week. John records it at the beginning of his ministry, the first Passover. Are they the same event? Well, if we take Scripture to be true, and as we understand it, this would indicate that Jesus actually cleansed the temple twice. One at the beginning of his ministry, and then 3 years later at the end when he concluded his life. And so I'm going to link an article from Answers in Genesis that goes into more detail, but we should always trust the authors, trust God that he's wiser than to put in such a blatant contradiction without us being able to easily discern what the answer might be. So check that out. Let me know your thoughts. How did the Lord speak to you in your readings today? I look forward to hearing it.